Welcome back for video 4.4 of Asteroids. And in this video we're going to create small asteroids that will appear when we destroy these large asteroids. And we are going to need to clean up some parts of these large asteroids. Specifically, the explosion needs a sound effect. And there's also a little bit of bookkeeping we have to do, because notice that I've destroyed those asteroids. But if I pause it and look at the hierarchy, I can actually see that their explosions are still persisting in the world. So those need to be cleaned up just like the sparks would be cleaned up. Because if you destroy enough asteroids, eventually your game environment will be cluttered with a bunch of these unused objects. So let's work on cleaning up the explosion prefab first. So if we go to prefabs, visual effects, explosions, then we go to explosion asteroid, which is the one that we're using. We can double click it to go into the prefab builder. And I want to add an audio effect to this. So you should be able to take the explosion asteroid sound effect and drag and drop it in as a component, and it should automatically insert the audio playback, as we can see that it did here. Now, this is actually one of those instances where play on awake does make sense, because we want this sound effect to play the moment this explosion gets created inside the game world. I'm going to drop the volume a little bit, just so that it's not blazingly loud. But again, that might be something you have to adjust to your liking. And then to delete them after they've been around, that's going to be the Spark cleanup script. And we can attach that as well. And I think I need more than 1.2 seconds, so I'm just going to up this to 2 seconds. And so it will delete it after 2 seconds of existing. So it'll play its particle effect, which I'm actually not sure. So it says it's a duration of 2, so that seems about reasonable. If it cuts it short, we might have to extend this exist duration. But if it's working fine at 2, then we won't need to do much to it. So then if we go back and hit play, we should have a sound effect when these things are destroyed. And then if we pause and check the hierarchy, we can see that those dummy objects that were spawned when we blew one up are no longer there. And that is an ideal situation for us to be in. We can even experiment and try to put a sound effect on the asteroid when we hit it. So if we go into our prefabs enemy asteroid big, and then double click it to go into the prefab builder, let's give it an audio component, an audio source. And I want to attach an audio clip, but I don't actually have like a hit sound. So if you check on our online sources, for this lesson I've posted a few extra audio pieces. And so take these, the pellet, the rocket, and the rocket high, and we're going to take that and drag and drop it into the audio folder of Unity, and it should automatically just load those up. So you can see that it's got the plus sign there. That way we know it's going to load to that folder and it's going to properly import them. So it loaded them. Kind of broke my the file names here, so let's just rename these a little bit. Ellet. We're going to call this pellet. This one's going to be called rocket. Perhaps I should not import them all simultaneously. I think that actually may have been the problem. I wonder if, while importing it, if it like concatenated like a comma in the file list, and maybe that caused Unity to have some problems with it. I don't really know. But you can listen to these effects and you can hear that we could probably use these as a different sound effect for when the asteroid gets hit. So going back to the asteroid big and where it has its audio source, we see that we do not have an audio clip selected. So take the rock hit audio clip. Now be careful, you can't just, if you're dragging something, you push escape, it'll stop dragging it. But notice if I click on this, it'll replace my inspector with the audio file. So you have to immediately click and drag. You can't click this first. So you click and drag it and bring it over to audio clip, release it. We do not want play on awake here because we're going to manually play this whenever we need to. And the volume, I think I was running a lot of these things at like 0.2 or So this is 0.4. I think we did 0.4 for the explosion, so 0.3 seems fine here. So it's got its own audio source with Rocket on it. And so we can leave the Asteroid Big prefab. And we'll notice that all the children asteroids, the ones that were spawned by the prefab, all have now inherited this audio source because we've basically updated the original, the blueprint for these things. So all of these dynamically updated as well, which is an incredibly powerful tool. If you change your enemy behavior, then you don't have to reinsert all the enemies in the world. So let's play this rocket sound effect by going into our Asteroid Big code. And during this on collision trigger, we can kind of be a little bit lazy about it if we want. So here we spawn the spark. We will play hit effect. And so we don't actually have to. If you notice a lot of times, when I have a component like rigid body, I will attach it up here during start. You don't always have to do that. You can just, pull up the component immediately so we can get component audio source and then hit play on it. So you don't have to bind it. It's just kind of a style of how you want to do things. Since this is the only place I'm really using it, I don't need to turn it into a variable. The other thing I wanted to go kind of, as I was thinking about it, I guess there's nothing really going on with that. Okay. Probably want to mess with the score after I destroy the asteroid. That'll come into play in lesson 5. There's some stuff there that probably needs to happen after we destroy it. Actually, that probably needs to be after the big asteroid. And I'm moving that around because I know that this add score is also going to be decreasing enemy count. And so when I destroy the asteroid, I'm going to decrease the total list of enemies in the world by 1. But I need to make sure I spawn the small asteroids first so the enemy count goes up, then when we decrease the enemy count. So I'm just putting a reminder here so I don't forget when we get to that part. And so this looks good. And so let's hit save, and we can hit save all if we want. We're about to probably duplicate this, so it's going to compile. And now we should have a hit effect on the big asteroid. And so we have that little ticking sound to give us a nice good hit confirmation sound effect. Okay, so we're looking pretty strong here with this asteroid. Most of the features we wanted to get in there, we've got in there. And now we need to start making the small asteroids that appear when you kill one of these big asteroids. And so, well, I guess let's take this prefab. I don't think there's necessarily a duplicate command. There is a duplicate command. So let's take the prefab inside of here and hit duplicate. And it creates a new prefab called Asteroid Big 1. So let's just go and let's open it up and just start working it from there. So I'm going to rename this to Asteroid Small. Push enter to confirm, and then it says prefab name must match the prefab ripod. Do you wish to rename the file? Yes, I do want to rename the file. And so these probably not going to change that. Let's change the model though. So we're going to go into models, and we're going to we can delete this one out, and let's use a different one. So let's take Asteroid 2, make it a new child of Asteroid Small. You can optionally clear the rotation if you wish. This isn't going to have a major impact. It will influence how we set up the collider though, because we need the collider to match whatever we're seeing right now. So if you do reset it, just bear in mind my numbers may be different, or I guess I reset yours, so if you don't reset yours. Okay, so let's go up to Asteroid Small here. And so So we need to fix this capsule collider a little bit because that does not match. So it really looks like it's going to need to be aligned along the x-axis right now, because that's where the majority of this, or I mean, you might even be able to get away switching to a spherical collider. But let's tweak this capsule collider to be along the x-axis now. Its height is going to be a little bit smaller. So instead of, let's try, ooh, that one's too small, 1.3. I go up 1.4 maybe. Seems reasonable. And then the radius can probably be dropped to 0.5. So it's a little bit smaller. And then we're going to change the scaling up here. So I'm going to drop it from 1.3 down to 0.8. So it's a smaller asteroid now. And I am going to remove asteroid big script because we're going to put a totally different script on it. So we've got pretty much most of the same parts of it. We just duplicated it and then tweaked it. So we can edit the prefab builder. And we can put one in the world just to kind of see the comparison alongside these other asteroids to see how big they would be. And so there's the size comparison of the big asteroid versus the small asteroid. And so that's, you know, kind of something to think about. If you wanted to make it smaller, we could. Maybe drop it to like 1.7. The nice thing about adjusting the scale this way is it is going to impact the capsule collider itself. It's going to be doing the computations behind the scenes. So we don't need to worry about changing these numbers ourselves. Although when creating the small asteroid, you should be kind of careful not to make it too small. Because if you make it too small, it may be impossible to hit with your laser. Bearing in mind, though, if you're using a mouse, you will be a lot more accurate than if you're just using purely the keyboard. Alright, so we've got that, and it looks good. Now we've got to make a new asteroid small script. And so we kind of want to take the asteroid big script. This is going to probably be a little bit less pleasant to duplicate, but let's try it anyway. So we're going to take asteroid big and we're going to duplicate. And now we've got asteroid big 1 and we've got a big glaring error. So let's start by renaming this script from asteroid big 1 to asteroid small. Still have a glaring error, and that's because the name of the class does not match the name of the file. But I wanted to rename the file first so that when we go into Visual Studio, by double-clicking it, it's a little bit more quicker and more pleasant. So rename this to asteroid small, and by doing so, if I hit save, that's going to fix this error. So we go back to Unity and we should see this error disappear because we've renamed the script, so it's all happy now. So not the most elegant way to duplicate something, but it worked out, you know, with like one error that we had to fix. Would make a good argument for kind of designing a more comprehensive asteroid class that could differentiate between being a small asteroid and a big asteroid, but that's fine. So let's adjust some of the settings. So let's make the smaller asteroids spin a little bit faster so they look a little bit crazier. We can adjust the speeds. Let's kind of kick this thing up to like 2.5 to maybe up to like 6. So we've got just a faster object in the game. Give it 20 hit points. We actually will not need this small asteroids variable because it's not going to be spawning little ones. I mean, I'm just going to comment it out. And we don't need this small asteroid prefab either because we're already at small asteroid. You could safely also delete these lines, but if you wanted to make this asteroid break up into smaller asteroids, I mean, you can uncomment these and re-enable them to break into, I guess, tiny asteroids. Point value, let's make this 150, so it's worth a little bit more because it's harder to hit. And the rest of this really doesn't need changed. Our start setup is pretty much identical. Our update is going to be pretty much identical. I mean, we can take out this to-do spawn small asteroids. And we can actually take out this because we aren't going to be spawning small asteroids. The physics commands are fine. And all of this is fine as well. And I don't need to really change anything here. So this all looks good. Remember, you can optionally delete these if you want the small prefab and the small asteroid, because we aren't going to be setting them. This thing's not going to spawn any smaller ones. So we can hit save, and our small asteroid script is done. So now we can go to our prefab builder for the small asteroid, attach this script, and they will work. The last task now is to spawn them when the big asteroid dies. So you can see I'm attaching the script to the parent object, not the child object. And so asteroid small has its script right here. We do need to bind to the explosion though. It currently does not have an explosion set. So we go to explosions, and we're going to attach an asteroid explosion to it. And so now it has its explosion, and its script is ready to go. So we can put another small asteroid in the world if we want. And we can try to hit them. They are extremely dangerous. If we wanted to be a little bit sillier, so here we have our audio source. We could actually pitch it up a little bit so that it's a higher pitched sound. And that way it sounds like it was a smaller asteroid dying. This 1.5 might sound ridiculous, but it will sound different. Then it come out too terribly. Interesting. Well, I'm a bit disappointed that they didn't really pitch it up at significant amounts. Well, that could be might be better off just opening that audio file inside of something like Audacity and tweaking it. So let's begin spawning these small asteroids. So let's open up asteroid big script. And so we know that this is going to need to be attached to the small asteroid prefab. And so we need to go through the act of spawning a number of small asteroids, and then we're going to be spawning the small asteroid prefab. So that's going to be done in this update method, this to do spawn small asteroid. And so we'll use a for loop for that. Kind of have to take our first for loop this entire problem, or entire project. So we've got for int I is 0, I is less than the number of small asteroids, I plus plus. So a standard loop that's going to run equal to the number of times that small asteroids is. And then we're going to run a method called spawn asteroid. Perhaps we should actually call it spawn small asteroid. And then we're going to pass it in my location. And I do also want to pass in a like a size to spawn it at. We haven't written the method yet, so it's going to be kind of mad at us. And so that kind of creates our code to spawn these things. So let's just pick a spot and begin writing this method. So we need to write a method called spawn small asteroid. So it could be public or private, since other things probably shouldn't be using it. This first input parameter is a location 3, or I'm sorry, a vector 3. And this second input parameter is our spawn radius, which is a float. So those are our inputs. So we're basically saying to spawn the asteroid at this using my old center and starting with a radius of 1.2, so it can be 1.2 units around it. And so I guess a good comparison, if we go look at this asteroid right here, we're saying we want it to be at most 1.2 away from it. So this x could be, you know, 1.2, negative 1.2, or negative 3.6. So Oh, I guess I gotta look on the x-axis here. Negative 1.2 would take us to be about right there. So we're saying when we destroy this asteroid, we were allowed to spawn them out this far away. And I said the other endpoint would be 3.6. So we could consider tightening that up a little bit. So maybe we only want them to be spawning like here. So maybe we need to drop that spawn radius a tiny bit because they are kind of spawning a little bit further away than we would want. Let's go 1.8. So try to keep them more closely to the center of this thing. So spawn small asteroid. And what we're going to do here is my way of checking to see if it's a safe location. So like we would get in some big trouble physics-wise if we spawn an asteroid inside of another asteroid. So we do have to check to make sure that the position is clear. So we're going to assume that the position that we pick is bad until it's proven to be non-colliding with anything. So we're going to create this other thing called a spawn offset that is going to, oops, I don't need. So the spawn offsets are going to contain the X and Y change that we're going to try to apply. So basically, to give an MS Paint diagram of what's about to happen, is if this is the old asteroid right there, when it dies, what we're going to do is we're going to use this variable spawn radius, and spawn radius is basically going to specify a kind of a size around here. So we're going to do like a spawn radius. I'm actually going to design it to be kind of a square. And it's going to randomly pick a X and Y position within this spawn radius. So it'll try here. And then what it's going to do is search a circle around that to see if there's any other like asteroids in there. And if so, then it will be a valid spawn radius. And then it's going to do this 3 times. And it's going to try to pick spawning locations. And it's going to check around them to see if there's another asteroid. If there's not, it'll spawn it there. That's what it's going to be doing. And so that's what this offset is. It's going to be how much plus or minus from this spawn location center we're going to be applying. And so we're going to get the, basically kind of the biggest size we need to worry about here. And so we're going to get the height of the small asteroid prefab's capsule collider. And I'm going to multiply it by like 1.05 just to make it a tiny bit bigger to give the asteroid some wiggle room so it's not exactly potentially stacked up directly on top of something. And so that way we know what size to check to see if we're going to collide into something. So while we don't have a good position, we're going to pick a random location within spawn radius. Now, I will kind of say that this may not be the best algorithm for doing so. Because we're going to be, essentially we're randomly picking till something works. And you probably can make the argument that you should randomly pick the location, and then you should like make the algorithm a little bit more complex. You should try to see what's around you and then slide accordingly. But I think this is easier to code and it will work just as well. So now we're going to set that spawn offsets vector that we had. To those random numbers we generated. We've generated a random number from the negative spawn radius to the positive spawn radius. And then we're going to set this offset to be those. So that's actually the random distance from the center of the spawn location. That's the point of spawn offsets. Then we're going to grab a list of the objects near there. And so what this command is doing is we're going to get a sphere of everything that has colliders at the position spawn center plus offset. So that random position we picked, so whatever location we're doing plus the random modification, that's the center of my sphere. And the radius of the sphere is the collider radius. So basically, anything that would be potentially within my collider upon moment of creation. That's the mentality here. Is would we touch a collider within this radius? So then we're going to set my position to be good. So we'll say that good position is true. And we're going to go through this entire list So we're going to go through, we're going to use a for each loop. So for each collider, item in things, if the tag, so if item dot game object dot tag dot equals asteroid, so that's where that tag is actually becoming useful, or the player. So if within this sphere that I've grabbed of items, if there's an asteroid or if there's a player, do not spawn inside of that. Notice though that we are allowing the asteroid to spawn within a laser. That's perfectly okay. If this thing's going to spawn right on top of a laser, that's not going to adversely affect our gameplay. But if this asteroid spawns on top of a player, that's really cheesy and you'll die instantly and not very fun. And if it spawns inside of another asteroid, they will get stuck in each other forever. So if there's any collider within this sphere that I wish to spawn in, then we're going to assume that position is bad. And then we will end my while loop. Before I end it though, one safety precaution I can make is I can increase the spawn radius every time I fail by 1. So the idea is each time I fail, I expand up that radius, the spawn radius, by 1. I could get even more, safe and try to, if you reach a certain point, it just gives up anyway. So what we could do here, add a new boolean called give up. Oh, we could call it no. What do I call it? Location? No location found. So this is kind of my failure case to prevent me from getting stuck in an infinite loop. So the idea is if I get stuck here trying to increase the spawn radius too many times, what we could do is just say if spawn radius, and this could be changed. We could try to use a counter instead. If my spawn radius is greater than 5, we're just going to say no location found, and we're going to break out of the loop. So we're just going to kick out of this loop, and we're going to just not even try to spawn an asteroid to prevent me from getting stuck in an infinite loop. Because if this spawn radius gets to 5 and I'm going up by 0.1 each time, that means I checked 50 different locations and I did not find a valid location for this asteroid to spawn in. So to prevent me from getting stuck in an infinite loop, if that spawn radius gets up to 5, I'm just going to give up. So if no location found is false, we will then instantiate the baby asteroid. And we'll give it a default rotation because the asteroid's going to get its own. It'll get its own name or its own rotation very quickly after it starts spinning it. So if this is only so if no location was found, we wouldn't spawn this, but it should anyway. And so, I mean, we don't necessarily need to put the good position true here because we know that the only case that we would be there is if we didn't break out of this loop. Although I suppose I could scrap this variable, this no location found variable. So let's take that out. And instead we could just use the fact that good position would be false at this moment because I didn't find anything. So we could actually just switch this to being good position. So if we found a good position, then we'll spawn the asteroid. Because if we would have broken here, we probably would not have found one. And I can guarantee that that's the case by doing this. So let's hit save, and let's test this to see if this works, because this should be spawning the asteroids. We've got this code here, and that looks good. So when we go back to Unity, let's move this asteroid outside of that asteroid. We do need to open up the prefab for asteroid big real quick, and we need to attach this small asteroid prefab into there. And now we are ready to see the small asteroids get created. They are kind of spawning in a wide range out of that, so maybe I'm going to drop this a little bit to like 0.6 to make it smaller. Maybe we could cheat this a tiny bit and drop this to like 0.9 to see if we can get them to spawn any closer to each other. Alright, so maybe I need to add one extra precaution into this loop. So instead of increasing the spawn radius, let's keep a variable called attempts. And so what we'll do instead is every time we fail, we will increase attempts by 1. And if attempts is greater than 10, we will up the spawn radius and then set attempts back down to 0. And so let's see if that helps prevent us from getting those asteroids spawned so far away. Because they are spawning very far apart. I wonder if it could also be this thing as the issue. Drop that to like 0.5. Because I'm wondering if this is just not pulling an accurate value. So I'm going to try to instead switch this to, instead of using this, using 0.5 as my radius sphere. And so those ones spawned in a little bit tighter pattern. And so as you work on your game, you can kind of decide if you want to tweak those any for yourself, knowing that they'll never spawn on the player. And so there, you can play around with this. This is using the height of the capsule collider, but that may be being too generous, knowing that they rotate. And so I set this to 0.5. So something to think about, if you want to try to get them closer to spawn together, you can lower this number. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this algorithm for spawning asteroids. It may be able to design it a little bit better, but overall, it's not the worst. And so we'll keep that, and now we have our big asteroid spawning little asteroids. And with that, we will probably call it good to go from here. The next video is going to, well, I'm going to add an extra video that's going to do pop-up damage numbers. So when you hit things, you get little damage numbers appearing. But the next lesson will start to cover how to turn this into a wave-based system, and also how to get the player to get destroyed when they get hit by an asteroid. So thank you for watching, and have fun with asteroids.